The humanity of Christ is everything to us. It is the golden chain that binds our soul to Christ, and through Christ to God. Satan in heaven has hated Christ for his position in the courts of God. He has hated him the more when himself was dethroned. He hated him who pledged himself to redeem a race of sinners. Yet in the world where Satan claimed dominion, God permitted his Son to come a helpless babe, subject to the weakness of humanity. He permitted him to meet life's peril in common with every human soul, to fight the battle as every child of humanity must fight it, at the risk of a failure and eternal loss. How much more could he give? Let's be clear on who Christ and the Father really are. It's a knowledge of God and his Son that opens to us the relationship that they hold as a figure of that which should be held on earth. Christ was literally the Son of God. It tells us that. And all power was given to him with joy, with all authority from the Father to Christ to create everything that exists. A misrepresentation has been given that there is little difference between the Father and Son. It really takes away from the personality and position of who they truly are. Fourth time 1 week, Daniel 9:27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Matthew 27:50, Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. So here's the fulfillment of this. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. So signifying the end of the service, necessary, it had been accomplished. Jesus had, by his death, in the midst of the week, the prophetic time, caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease. That sacrifice that must be given over and over again, symbolizing the true sacrifice. The sacrifice of Christ himself had been given. There was no longer to have this representation of the sacrifice of the Lamb in the temple. For Christ, the Lamb was sacrificed, as Paul said, once, a perfect offering. In the midst of the week, the covenant was confirmed. Revelation 13:8, the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed, and it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Who was he speaking to? He was speaking to the serpent, Lucifer, and he was also speaking to humanity, or to the woman, and he would step in between the two to give the human race a second chance. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Isaiah 53:7, he was oppressed. 53:11, he saw the travail of his soul, and he was satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. He was bearing the iniquities of the world on the cross, a sacrifice for sin. A complete offering has been made, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Now notice what it says about his Son. Not a son by creation, as were the angels, nor a son by adoption, as is the forgiven sinner, but a Son begotten in the express image of the Father's person, in all the brightness of his majesty and glory, one equal with God in authority, dignity, and divine perfection. In him dwelt all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Now Christ did all this for us, laid down everything for us, made a complete and perfect sacrifice. Then we must ask the question, why are we so stunted in our growth? Why do we plead and plead over something which he has forgiven us for. Because of the sinfulness of who we are, because of the depravity, we are sunken low, and we can remain in that sunken state unless we take the word as it is. By faith, by trust, pick up that bed and walk and start a new life. Many people will not be successful because they cannot take God at his word. Worlds unfallen and the heavenly angels had watched with intense interest as the conflict drew to its close. Satan and his confederacy of evil, the legions of apostasy, watch intensely this great crisis in the work of redemption. The powers of good and evil waited to see what answer would come to Christ's thrice repeated prayer. Angels had longed to bring relief to the divine sufferer, but this might not be. No way of escape was found for the Son of God. In this awful crisis, when everything was at stake, when the mysterious cup trembled in the hand of the sufferer, the heavens opened, a light shone forth amid the stormy darkness of the crisis hour, and the mighty angel who stands in God's presence, occupies a position from which Satan fell, came to the side of Christ. The angel came not to take the cup from Christ's hand, but to strengthen him to drink it, with the assurance of the Father's love. He came to give power to the divine human supplicant. He points him to the open heavens, telling him of the souls that would be saved as a result of his suffering. He assures him that his Father is greater and more powerful than Satan, that his death would result in the utter discomfiture of Satan, and that the kingdom of this world would be given to the saints of the Most High. He told him that he would see the travail of his soul and be satisfied. He would see a multitude of human race saved, eternally saved. Thank God. Scriptural predictions concerning the Messiah. Micah 5:2. But thou, Bethlehem, Ephraim, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of these shall come forth unto me, that is, to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth has been of old from everlasting. Isaiah 7:14. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. In Luke 1:30, and the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favour with God, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. Out of Ephraim, out of Bethlehem, came the birth of Jesus, long predicted, and a virgin did conceive. This was all foretold. Out of the mouth of an apostate prophet comes this. Numbers 24:17. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Seth. Zechariah 11:13. And the Lord said unto me, Cast it unto the potter a goodly price, that I was prized at them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord, predicting how Christ would be sold for money. Matthew 27:3. Then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw he was condemned, repented himself, and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, What is that to us? See thou to it. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple, and departed, and went and hanged himself. Isaiah 56. I gave my back to the smiters, and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. I hid not my face from the shame and spitting. predicting the treatment that Jesus would receive at sinners' hands. And again in Psalms 22:13-21, they gasp upon me with their mouths as a ravening, as a roaring lion, as Satan himself. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it melted in the midst of my bowels. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws, and thou hast brought me into the dust of death. For the dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierce my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones, they look and stare upon me. They part my garments among me, and cast lots upon my vesture. But be not thou far from me, O Lord, O my strength. Haste thee to help me. Deliver my soul from the sword, my darling from the power of the dog. The dog represents the uncleanness, the unfilthiness, a male prostitute. Save me from the lion's mouth, save me from Satan's mouth. He is a roaring lion, ready to devour whom he will. For thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. For another 3.5 years the gospel was taken to the Jews and then to the Gentiles. The death of Stephen marks the end of the 70 weeks. Great light had been given the Jews, but they would not take heed to it. To substantiate truth, evidence had been piled upon evidence. Now, this is true of our own time in which we live. Evidence is piled upon evidence. But people reject the evidence given. As a nation, they rejected the counsel of God against themselves. So great was their influence for evil upon the human family that God made an example of them before the world. The death of Stephen marks the end of the 70 weeks. The message is sent to the Gentiles. So we have 457 given as a date because it was set by law. Complete autonomy was given for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. 457, and from that date we have the 69 weeks with the coming of the Messiah, in which Jesus was baptized. AD 27, in the midst of the week Jesus was crucified, and at the end of the week the termination, or the 70 weeks determined upon the children of Israel. They could accept the Messiah and bring in everlasting righteousness, put an end to sin, and declare the Messiah, or else the probationary time would be finished for them and the message would be handed on to others. Gospel to the Gentiles extended from the end of the 70 weeks till 1844. Because the vision was not sealed, the transgression of desolation proceeded in what is called the Dark Ages. The end of the 2,300 days, 457 extending down to 1844. What does it really mean? But thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So these time prophecies became evident at that time, down in 1843-44. Out of all of this, there came a sanctifying message, sanctified through the word, through the truth. The truth was made known at this point of time. Knowledge in God's word was also increased, and this was given to the world. Given to the world to accept or reject according to the value that they placed upon it. But for those who had interest in eternal life, it was there for the giving, and it was an opening of this knowledge that would make a people ready for translation. For what need would there be for the sanctuary to be cleansed if heaven was a pure place already? But it says that Christ was making mediation for us who are sinners. Record was taken of that. of the transforming power of Christ had to be evident in the works. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. Those works must be evident and are taken record of, whether they be for ill or for good. So, mistakes have been made along the way. Many records of sins and human frailty have been recorded against many names, but those names are brought up to the judgment with Christ as advocate. And for those who have faith and trust in him, who have had the power of the Holy Spirit in their life, a change is seen and made evident. So the judgment can clear the name, and the person is ready to be accepted into heaven. Angels, the Father, the Son, mark with joy those who are ready for the kingdom. Daniel 7:8, I consider the horns, and behold, there come up among them a little horn, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I beheld till thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and his hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. If you think about it, how many are standing before the throne? They're going over the names and records of people. It's a huge event, and it's marked right there in the Bible. Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. This huge heavenly event that is of human interest, of a time of great importance, that will determine eternity, is marked clearly. Once a year could the high priest enter into the most holy place, after the most careful and solemn preparation. So this was a antitype of the type, speaking of the day in which we live. No mortal eye, but that of the high priest, could look upon the sacred grandeur of that apartment, because it was the special dwelling place of God's visible glory. The high priest always entered it with trembling, while the people waited his return with solemn silence, because if sin was found among the congregation, the priest's life would be taken. Their earnest desires were to God for his blessing. Before the mercy seat, God conversed with the high priest. If he remained an unusual time in the most holy, the people were often terrified, fearing that because of their sins, or some sin of the priest, the glory of the Lord had slain him. But when the sound of the tinkling of the bells of his garment were heard, they were greatly relieved. He then came forth and blessed the people. Daniel 7:11-14. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed and given to burning flames. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. See, the Old Testament speaks about Christ receiving his dominion. His authority is given to him from the Father or the Ancient of Days. But sadly, the Jews of old did not recognize what is spoken here in Daniel. There was given him dominion, glory, a kingdom, and all people, nations, languages would serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. The 2,300 days given to us in the graphic form. 1844, judgment begins. An event in heaven affects men on earth. That event that began in heaven was with a message that will restore truth on earth, make a people ready for translation and to receive him. If truth was not presented, if true doctrine was not taught, how could God come to receive his own? It just wouldn't happen. 2,300 days marks the time of preparation for the second coming, the real day of atonement. That which concerned us on earth, that was going on in heaven for our sakes, was marked. It also marked the time of preparation by truths and doctrines being restored. Prophetic time ended, Revelation 10:6. That prophetic time period finished in 1844 with the movement of a people who would keep the law, who would make ready preparation for the coming of Christ. It was realized that Christ was our high priest. This was not a doctrine, a teaching known to the churches, and before he comes, he must have a sanctified church. A new movement took up this message. There was a restoration of truths. What were they? Concerning the state of the dead, the Sabbath, the high priesthood of Christ, concerning health. These truths and others of a gospel different to that which had existed before. The gospel message was complete. The time was marked by a great religious awakening. God's ideal was for Israel to carry the message of salvation to the world, but they failed. Therefore the commission was given to others. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatever I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Leviticus 23:27-30. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before the Lord your God. For whosoever the soul it be that shall not be afflicted in the same day, he shall be cut off from amongst his people. Notice the words that are said there. Do no work. To make preparation. The work that they were to do was the preparation for the coming of Christ. They were to afflict the souls. If not, and afflicting their souls, that means to make reconciliation for sin. He shall be cut off otherwise from amongst his people. He would not be saved. Whosoever the soul it be that doeth any work in that same day, the same soul will I destroy from amongst his people. Hebrews 9:11. Christ being come a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Hebrews 9:11. Christ being made a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Now Christ, when he was on earth, he was received up into heaven. Where does it say? It says once into the holy place, not the most holy place, into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. Hebrews 9:11. Daniel 9:24. Concerning the 2300-day prophecy, seal up the vision and prophecy, but the vision was not sealed or complete, but was sealed till the time of the end. Daniel 12:4. The vision was not complete because the Messiah was rejected and an opportunity was given for the Gentiles, which might have been relayed through Israel had they accepted the Son of God. In Daniel it said that he was brought before the Ancient of Days to receive the kingdom and power. The temple on earth was destroyed when Jesus died on the cross or shortly after. And again, by the Roman soldiers at the end of the 70 weeks, that it was physically destroyed. So spiritually and physically, destruction was shown. One symbolically, shortly after the whole building came down. Matthew 27:51, and behold, the veil of the temple was rent from twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent. And of course, a prediction was given in Matthew 24 concerning the complete destruction, the destruction of the temple. Matthew 24:1, Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples come to him to show him the buildings of the temple. Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. As he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples come to him privately, saying, Tell us when shall all these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, is an answer to this, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. The abomination of desolation, desolating power, first of all its fulfillment was with the power of pagan Rome, but that power changed to papal. In an understanding prophecy, one will understand how in the last days this would reach a fulfillment. Matthew 24:15, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, this is speaking of the pagan Roman power, but also that which came after it became the papal Roman power, which would remain until the end. Spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand. So, in a physical sense, the Roman power stood in the holy place. But also in a spiritual sense, the Roman power stood in the holy place and took that position which was not due to himself. Then let him which is in Judea flee to the mountains. This is a message for end times as well. Let him which is on the rooftop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is the worship day, the day of rest and communion with God, and is the holy commandment. So Christ says, pray that that day will not be affected by this calamity. So Christ, having been put to death, risen from the dead, he's speaking in the future, but he says, pray that this will not happen on the Sabbath day. So obviously he had not instituted another day for this prophecy. In it he speaks of the reverence for the Sabbath. For then shall be a great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days shall be shortened, there shall be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. The deadly wound healed. While these prophecies received a partial fulfillment at the destruction of Jerusalem, they shall have a more direct application in the last day, when the little horn power shall stand in the place of his sanctuary and shall cast his people again down to the ground, God's people. It says at that point in time to flee to the mountains. The prediction given here came to full fulfillment. The city of Jerusalem and the temple were besieged. In that siege, the soldiers, for some reason, decided, the Roman soldiers under Cestus, they retreated, and the Jews ran after them and spoiled them, and they came away from that first situation without the loss of life, virtually. But then the Roman soldiers came back again, and this time they tried various means, but in the end they put a barricade right around the city, surrounded the whole city, and starved the people within. And the carnage and what happened inside that city were horrific. The provisions that they might have had, they were low on, and also because of the time of year, many Jews were in the city. And a report is given of a woman who ate her own child. The result of starvation and what happened there was satanic, for they had no longer the protection of Christ. They rejected him as the Messiah. But those who fled during the first retreat of the army, the Roman armies, were able to flee to the mountain because they believed the word of Christ, the prophecy that had been given, and they fled for their lives. And so they were protected by obeying the word of God. What happened there? The carnage, that there were crucifixions right across the landscape. What happened there is a miniature of the end of the world scenario, when there will be starvation and the armies of Satan will cause carnage everywhere, and there will no longer be any protection given. The four winds are loosed and destruction occurs right across the world. This is the work of Satan. Mark 1:15, Christ said, "Time is fulfilled," but the time prophecy was not complete and would continue. Would continue down to the time of judgment in 1844. Daniel and the time prophecies were sealed, but thou, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. When shall that time be? It says in the verse, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. When did that knowledge start with its increase? With the printing of the Bible, the word of God in the language of the common people, put into print. The printing press first turned to the Bible to have that printed to be spread abroad. Daniel 8:17, so he came near to me where I stood, and when he came I was afraid and fell upon my face, and he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. This is in Daniel chapter 8 concerning the 2,300 days. The vision shall be at the time of the end. In Daniel 8:26, and the vision of the evening and morning which was told is true, wherefore shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Now after the resurrection, Jesus went up into the heavens, and he ministered in the sanctuary, it says, which the Lord pitched and not man. And visions were given to John the Revelator, the beloved disciple, concerning a revelation of Jesus Christ, and it related to the sanctuary. The message of the sanctuary was there. What had been taken away on the earth was placed in heaven, the true sanctuary in the heavens above, and this is where Christ ministered for his people. And in the Revelation it speaks in this wise: "And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the back side, sealed with 7 seals," indicating perfection. 7 is the number of perfection, as is the Sabbath day is the number 7. "And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof? And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it were had been slain, having 7 horns, 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. So the book couldn't be opened. So what? Why would the prophet weep? Why would he be overcome with emotion that the book couldn't be opened? Perhaps it was to do with the revelation of Jesus Christ, and that revelation revealed in the life, that which would make a people ready for his coming. Maybe all humanity would be lost without a knowledge of those things that were in there, the guideposts to the future. Those guideposts depend really on a revelation of Christ himself. Without that revelation, we cannot become as he is. It was the realization of this, I believe, that made the prophet weep. Because in it lays 2 things open: that which is false and that which is true. It lays the Gospels at 2 opposites: the gospel of Antichrist and the gospel of Christ, good and evil, or the tree of knowledge. The Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Without the sacrifice given, there was nothing that could meet the requirements of what we should be, or to obtain to the love of God would be impossible for us without the sacrifice of the Lamb and by his Spirit living in the life. This is why the prophet wept. There was nobody who was worthy until the Lamb came along, and the Lamb was worthy. Without the Lamb, there was no future. Humanity was lost, the prophet was lost, everything was lost. With the Lamb, the future would be open, life would be given into humanity's hand. Notice the pictures given in Revelation. Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, has 7 eyes and 7 horns. Is not a ferocious beast, but the one that is dictatorial, coming up out of the sea. It also has 7 heads, the power of Antichrist. And I saw another mighty angel come down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was upon his head. The rainbow comes from the throne of God. His face were as the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Remember, Christ's description in Revelation 1 is as this. Remember that Lamb denotes Christ, slain from the foundation of the world. He had in his hand a little book open. He set his right foot upon the sea and his left foot upon the earth. This indicates the spread of this message for where it was to be delivered. Every corner of the earth, from the populated to the sparse areas of the earth, this message would go. Took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it, and it was in my mouth sweet as honey, and as soon as I'd eaten it, my belly was bitter. The sanctuary message in the gospel that to prepare a people for the coming of the Lord came out of a bittersweet experience. Bitter because the teachings and the revelation of Jesus Christ were not fully understood. But as they ate, as they devoured the book, a new understanding came out from the disappointment that Christ did not return in 1844. The sanctuary was not an indication or a representation of the earth, but rather it pointed to the heavens above, and a message that would be unique and restored those old truths concerning Sabbath keeping, the sanctuary message itself, the state of the dead. The state of the dead had an impact on how we should look after the body. So there were these foundational truths that were brought back at this point of time. And more than this, a gospel unto perfection that would prepare a people for the coming of the Lord, that would have the strength and power that it ought to have as given in apostolic time, that sin and reconciliation for iniquity would be made and sin would be cut off from the people. A day of atonement would begin to prepare a people for translation. That time has gone on for quite a length of a period of time that has extended because of the mercy of God. Great mercy has God to see that all have opportunity and that he should be brought to his kingdom. The little book was opened. See here the charts that come from this time. It began at this point of time. The revelation of Jesus Christ became real because the little book of Daniel became an open book. Christ had opened the understanding to a people. Foundational truths were restored, and part of this restoration message is in the time prophecies. The sanctuary had become a very unreal place because people had lost the meaning of the teachings that were given clearly in the Bible. People believed that they were whispering spirits that would ascend straight to heaven after death. These sort of teachings of mysticism subtracted from the true message. Heaven is a real place where real things are going on. The sanctuary message, a fiery stream issued forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the judgment was set, and the books were opened. How many are involved in this great judgment scene? And it's about humanity. Wouldn't there be something that marks this period of time as special? It's marked by an event that's in heaven and on earth. Revelation 20 verse 12, I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books are open, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the book according to their works. This is a great and solemn occasion in which men are given opportunity to realize and to participate and to be part of his kingdom and prepare their souls to be like Christ, have the mind of Christ. And God tells us that which is important for our eternal destiny. He marks this solemn occasion, and it's given on earth for a preparation of his people. Truths are restored that have been laid in the dust throughout the dark ages. Daniel 7:9-11. I beheld till thrones were cast down, the Ancient of Days did sit, speaking of the Father, whose garments were white as snow, and his hair of his head were like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake. The little horn spake, saying, I beheld even to the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. Judgment is set against the little horn power. This little horn, the Antichrist, is presented against the true Saviour. But it says judgment is set against him. And those who follow the little horn, the judgment is set against those who choose the Antichrist. Two teachings, two gospels, changed nature, perfecting ourselves in Christ, or a little good and evil, little sin, doing some right and wrong, but that's not a changed nature. Our teaching is to observe all things, to have the mind of Christ. A separation from that which is of the world, not of Christ. Both Christ and Antichrist will appear on the earth. Judgment will proceed. The end will come at the time of the end. We're told when that time is. So we're told what to expect and what to look out for. I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. What is that everlasting gospel? A restoration of mankind to where Adam was before he fell. A mind that is perfectly like Christ, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him. It's a worship message. Where is worship given in specifics? In the Sabbath command. And this is echoing or reiterating that Sabbath command. For the hour of his judgment is come. Worship him that made heaven, earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. The language of the Sabbath. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen the great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. There is to be a pointing out of that which is false and that which is true. Third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, he will receive the wrath of God, is what it says. So if any man takes in the doctrine, or for convenience follows the power of the beast, despite his conviction, he shall receive of the plagues. How is the sanctuary to be cleansed after 2,300 days? By a gospel message, by a healing message that is sent to the world. Jesus said, now are ye clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. The word, Christ is the word, has a cleaning effect on the life. Message to observe all things. Also, as we have said before, to finish transgression, to make an end to sin, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up the vision and prophecy, and anoint the most holy. How can we do that? We acknowledge the Creator by worshipping on the day that is given, so he will manifest himself to us. His Holy Spirit is given to a commandment-keeping people. By having the mind that he has, we will honour him. And by honouring him, a people is ready to be received, to be part of a very special group, the 144,000, to be translated to heaven, not seeing death. Jesus said, destroy this body, in 3 days I'll raise it up. Where did he go? Up into heaven. There he was to minister in the heavenly sanctuary as a high priest, while the temple on earth was destroyed. God's people at the time, the nation of Israel, refused to be cleansed. The idea was to have the nation of Israel spread with God's protective wings across the world. The protection Jesus offered was refused, and martyrdom followed. In obscurity, the church witnessed and was almost silent by persecution until the time of the deadly wound, in which the little horn received a blow that Roman power and church and state no longer ruled. The end of the 2300 days, 1844, saw a revival that has never been experienced since apostolic times. It was a pure church at that time. Philadelphia had no comments of condemnation. The Church of Philadelphia. John 15 verse 3. Now are you clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. What was made known at that time were the prophecies. The little book was opened. A true gospel message was given, and foundational messages were restored. Hebrews 8:1. Now the things which you have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest, who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched and not man. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. The mitre of the priest said, Holiness unto the Lord. This was to represent what we were to become. Of course, the mitre is across the forehead. The forehead is where God communicates. We destroy our mind and our power to make decisions. It's in the forehead. A metaphor is given to outline the restoration message. There is a solid, immovable platform representing Christ, the steps of the three angels. Step number 1 was about worship. Without true worship, without the true mind of Christ, there's no use talking about Babylon and its sins, or there's no differentiation between Babylon and the true gospel if we don't have true worship. See, in the beginning was also illustrated. Cain came and presented to God what he wanted to present, and he was rejected. And Abel presented what was required of him, and he was accepted. And Cain was full of wrath against his brother because of what had happened. He'd been rejected and his brother accepted, and he killed his brother. So it will continue. The pillar to support this platform, conditional immortality, the seventh-day Sabbath. We mention the high priesthood of Christ, the second coming of Jesus. Here's some verses that match up. They're not extensive. We just put in a small container here. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. 1 Thessalonians 4:14. If we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For this is the second coming of Christ. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Deuteronomy 5:12. Keep the Sabbath day, sanctify it. Not only keep it, sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days shalt thou labour and do thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. A commandment-keeping people will God manifest himself to, and if you love me, keep my commandments. It's pretty plain. 1 Timothy 2:5. For there is one God and the one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus. And we said, this is the sum. We have a high priest in the heavens, of whom Christ is that priest, a minister of the sanctuary, the true one which the Lord pitched. The sanctuary was not to be restored on earth, but we are to look to heaven above where Christ ascended. This is a unique teaching that was brought to view by the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Hebrews 8:1, we've said this one, so look at it carefully again. He is a minister of the sanctuary in the heavens above, and it was taken, the original sanctuary, of course, was a model of the heavenly, which Moses was given intimate detail of, a replica of those things. And by it, its teaching is how God deals with sin. On the great day of atonement, a message is given to prepare a people, their hearts for the coming of the King, to finish transgression, make an end to sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity. How important is that? It is a sanctifying message, meaning making clean, putting away sin. Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctify them. Only two have ever been translated without seeing death, Enoch and Elijah, but now a special sanctifying message is given to prepare a people for his return. By these two men is represented the classes that will be taken to heaven of the righteous. Moses had died, but was resurrected. We're told that in Jude, if you look at that. So a special resurrection. Moses was to represent the righteous dead who would be resurrected at the last day. Now, Paul told us in Thessalonians, at the last day the trump of God shall sound. And we have Elijah, who went directly to heaven without seeing death. These two men represent the special class that will be taken to heaven at the second coming with the resurrection. Resurrection and translation. For behold, I create new heavens, new earth, the former shall not be remembered nor come to mind. For I will rejoice in Jerusalem, and joy in my people, and the voice of weeping shall be heard no more in her, nor the voice of crying. There shall be no more thence an infinite days, nor an old man that hath not filled his days. For the child shall die 100 years old, who is a sinner, but the sinner being 100 years old shall be accursed. Those who are sinners will have a short life. Those who are commandment-keeping people, who take value in life, will live forever. Isaiah 66:21-23, and I will also take of them for priests and for Levites, saith the Lord. These will be priests that will minister in the heavens above, a special group who have the mind of Christ, who have come out of great tribulation. For as the new heavens and the new earth which I make shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. There will be the reinstitution of festivals of commemoration and of the keeping of the Sabbath. And only Sabbath-keeping people will be found in that place, for they will recognize true worship, and they will want to be part of that true worship. There's some real Bible babble. What manuscript we look at, what Bible we look at is very important, because some of the manuscripts you cannot put the meaning together, or of the versions, modern versions of the Bible. The Message of 2002, after 62 sevens, the anointed leader will be killed. So the anointed one will come to an end. It's just a false message. Christ does not come to an end. Versions like the NIV, RSV, NRSV, ESV, Holman, and NASB read, the Messiah shall be cut off and have nothing. Another false message. So we need to take care of having a clear message. We can trust that which has been given as the Bible of the Reformation. And that is the King James Version because of the manuscripts it comes from. The key point is what manuscripts it comes from, and the beauty of the King James, it is not like modern versions. It doesn't come under copyright. Now, we mentioned this before, and it's said in Hebrews 9:11, but Christ being come, high priest of good things to come, by greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. That is in the King James Version. Hebrews 9:12, New International. He did not enter by means of the blood of goats and calves, but he entered the most holy place once for all by his own blood, thus obtaining eternal redemption. This is a false message. This does not follow the message that is given in Revelation. Christ did not ascend up into the most holy place. He ascended up into the holy place, into the first apartment, and a special work was carried forward at the end of the 2,300 days when judgment was set. A false message is given by these manuscripts and by this Bible. The Good News Bible was so blatant it actually changed the prophetic times. So it made the prophecies unintelligible. Angels of God mark this time with great significance. There was war in heaven in the beginning. People were rejected out of heaven in that war, and the war continues here on earth with allegiance given. Allegiance is given on one side or the other according to those who are willing to obey and those who will not obey. The requirements for eternal life are quite clear, and it's of great importance and interest to the angels of heaven that sin should not re-emerge throughout the universe, that this carnage that has occurred in creation should never occur again. The time of the judgment and preparation of God's people is very important. We should be pressing towards that high mark in Christ, to have the maturity of a mind that could converse with one at the throne of God. It's my prayer that we shall not sell ourselves short, but we shall step up to the mark of the high calling which God has given for us to sit with him in heavenly places. The book of Daniel and Revelation became clear to commandment-keeping people, but became unclear to those accepting a false gospel. Letting his mind be in you is knowing where he resides, what he does and what he expects, and believing in his power to do.